friends, I'm Sarah, also known as Budget Girl here, and I am thrilled to have you back for this video, or welcome if it is your first time. So today I have the absolute honor of talking with one of my real estate investing friends, Rachel Richards. She is an absolute dynamo and is doing amazing things that I think we can all learn a little bit from. First off, she has, is that your dogs?
Yeah, can you hear that?
Yeah, I can. It's okay. Rachel actually retired herself at age 27 due to her passive income, which comes out to over 20 grand a month. And she is the best-selling author of 2 books, Money Honey and Passive Income Aggressive Retirement. And today we are going to talk about how she scaled from 0 to 38 doors in under 3 years. So very excited. Introduce Rachel to you. Welcome, Rachel. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks, Sarah. I'm super excited to talk to you.
Of course. So let's jump right in. How did you get started in money and real estate investing?
Absolutely. So I was obsessed with learning about money when I was pretty young. I've been a finance nerd my whole life, proud of it. But one of the first books I read was in middle school, and it was Motley Fool's Guide, for teens, I think, how to have more money than your parents ever dreamed of. And I was in 6th grade when I found this book in summer camp. And I was sitting by the pool reading it when all of my friends were going down the water slides and playing and everything. So my obsession started pretty early. And the thing was, growing up, I didn't have a lot of money. My parents didn't have a lot of money. We were very much living paycheck to paycheck. We weren't poor. We weren't living in poverty. But, I didn't really know better or know the difference. And we lived in this very wealthy county, a very upper middle class, very wealthy county. So in comparison, I thought we were poor and there was never enough money to go around. We weren't going out to eat at restaurants, let alone going on family trips. And we were always struggling to make ends meet. Money was always a stressor in our family. And I remember thinking at a pretty young age, I didn't want to end up like everyone else struggling with money. I didn't want to have to operate on a strict budget or borrow money from family and friends to make it to my next paycheck. I wanted to be different. And I realized that what I did then would either set me up for wealth or for poverty. So I started taking things really seriously. It kind of sparked a fire in me. I read every book I could read. I looked at every website I could read and started learning everything I could about finance. And then I went into college and became obsessed with real estate investing after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is very common for a lot of people, I think.
So your parents weren't particularly affluent or didn't really teach you about money. That was something you took upon yourself and kind of started with.
Correct.
Okay. Very cool. So, what did you major in college? What is your degree in?
I majored in financial economics.
Okay. So you learned more about that in the time. And how long after college was it that you started purchasing real estate?
So I graduated early. And then it was 4 years. So I graduated when I was 20 and I purchased my first duplex when I was 24.
How cool. Congratulations. So as you know, I'm in a duplex and my first purchase was when I was 31. So I'm a little behind, but we'll get there. So how did you scale? And how many doors do you currently have right now? Actually, let's do that first. How many, so what are you at now? And what do those doors consist of? Because you have 36 and you're about to buy another?
We had 38. We had 38 doors. So by the time I was 26, my husband and I built our real estate portfolio to 38 doors, 6 buildings, 38 units. Last year, we did sell a lot of those units off, which we can talk about why. But I've been investing a lot of the proceeds from those into real estate syndications, which we can also talk about. So I'm a part owner in a lot bigger commercial investments like apartment buildings, self-storage units, et cetera. So if you consider my part ownership in that, I'm technically invested in over 1,000 units now, but it's misleading to say that. So I never say that.
Yeah. But the ones that you owned yourself from 0 to 38. So I know you had a boarding house. Can you explain what that is to me and people? Because I don't think most people have heard of that.
Oh my gosh. The boarding house was so eye-opening for me. This was I think it was the second investment property purchase. And we found it actually on the MLS. So I want to start by explaining the 1% rule for those that might not be familiar with it. The 1% rule states that basically a $100,000 property should ideally rent for $1,000 per month in rent. Okay, a $300,000 property should rent for $3,000 per month. Now, a lot of people are going to hear this and say, well, Rachel, that's impossible, right? you're crazy to think I could get that cash flow in California or in some of these really expensive markets. And you're right. A lot of the times you're not going to find that on the MLS. You'll have to look off market or have to be really creative. And one of the things about this boarding house model is it's very creative and it can take a good property into a cash cow. So I saw this listing on the MLS. It was listed for $430,000, and this was in 2017 in Louisville, Kentucky. It was listed for $430,000. It was a fourplex, a quad. The rent was, I think they said it was $7,600 or $7,300 or something like that per month that it was bringing in. And I was like, wait a second, like the 2% rule.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, it should be bringing in $4,300 a month. It's bringing in $7,600 a month. I thought it was a mistake. I called the list agent. I was like, I think your numbers are wrong. What's the deal here? What's going on? And the list agent was like, no, it's right. This is how this boarding house works. Why don't you come over and see it? So the way this was structured is instead of renting out to 4 tenants, each unit to a tenant, they rented out each bedroom individually.
Okay.
So they
kind of like a college dorm rental.
Yeah, exactly. So they would independently lease every bedroom in the whole quad. And there were 12 bedrooms, I think, because each unit was a 3-bed and then 1 or 2 bath unit in this quad. So they had 12 units and then it was a weekly rental. They would start off their tenants with a 12-week minimum lease. And then it would roll into a week-to-week lease. And what was really cool is that it was a win-win because for the tenants that lived in these buildings, they were paying one flat fee, something like $130 or $140 or $150 per week to live there. It was fully furnished. That price included Wi-Fi, all of the utilities, electric, gas, everything. So they paid that one fee. They could move in. It was fully furnished and it was very easy for them and very, very affordable. Okay. $140 a week. Yeah. Super affordable. Affordable housing is really needed in every single city. And then
that's like less than $500 a month.
Yeah, it's crazy cheap. But then for the owner, they're able to make so much more money by doing it this way because you have all these different bedrooms that are independently leased and the money just adds up a lot faster that way. So that's how it worked. We saw this property. It obviously was going to take a very unique buyer to want to kind of delve into this and take this on. With a lot of real estate investments, it's a time versus money trade-off. Yeah. When you start off, you don't have a lot of money, which is where I was. Andrew and I didn't have a lot of money. We were willing to hustle. We were willing to work a lot harder to build up our portfolio, knowing that later on we could make it more passive. So we were willing to take this on and work harder and manage these tenants, knowing it was going to be a lot more work and probably a bigger pain in the butt than just a normal long-term tenant would be. But that's what we did. And we made a ton of money and it served us really well.
So that was kind of a short-term meets long-term type situation. Exactly. And you were making like $4,000 a month off of this?
The profit ended up being for that first one, $2,500 a month in profit. And if I remember correctly, our total initial investment was $90,000 or something like that.
Wow.
And then the annual cash flow, what's that? 2,500 times 12. So the annual cash flow was $30,000. So $30,000 divided by 9. So it was over a 30% cash on cash ROI.
Yeah. You made back your money in like 4 months. That's awesome. Do you still have the boarding house or was that one of the assets you sold?
No, we ended up selling the 3 boarding houses last year because we bought 2 more, held those for several years. And those were the 3 houses we sold last year.
Did you have somebody property manage those or were you pretty much running those?
We did at times. And I'm glad you asked, Sarah, because I feel like when I sometimes tell my story, it's like, wow, that's so amazing. I can never do that. But there are so many mistakes that I made. Some of them are laughable and embarrassing. And the property manager one is one of the biggest mistakes I ever made as a real estate investor. So I actually read your book, believe it or not.
Of course I read your book, but I read a little bit about like hiring someone off of Craigslist and they stole like $6,000 or $9,000 or something. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was cool. Super fun. 10 out of 10, do not recommend. But yeah, basically what happened is we hired this couple to start working for us and just doing odd jobs, like fixing something, mowing the lawn, doing little things here and there. But this was a husband and wife.
For rent?
No, we were just paying them like an hourly rate. I don't know if it was $15, $20 an hour. They were the hardest working people I've ever met, literally. And they always went above and beyond. They wanted to take on more work. We kept giving them more work over the months. started building trust, everything. And then when it came time to hire a property manager, which we owned 26 units at the time, my husband and I were both still working full time, 40 or 50 hours per week. And I was writing my books in the evenings. So it came time to hire a property manager for sure. The mistake I made is that I am very frugal. And sometimes being too frugal can cost you a lot more money in the long run. Yes. So we looked at hiring all these different property management companies and saw how much it was going to cost. Or we looked at hiring this couple who'd been doing all this amazing work for us and making them employees of our company. And we figured we could save some money and be a little bit more hands-on with the way we were training them, because this was a pretty unique model anyways. So we decided to hire this couple. Everything started out great. We were super happy. Then about 6 months later, things started to slip. And 6 months later, Andrew went to collect rent from the on-site lock boxes one day. And he realized there was a lot of rent missing, and not just the normal tenant or two paying late. There was a substantial amount missing. So come to find out, they had stolen $6,000 in rental income that weekend and fled. And later we found out they'd been skimming from us from the front end of the rental leases for months. And they had been squatting in our units and properties for almost a year. And we didn't know. We had no idea.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was devastating to us. I mean, such an emotional blow. We trusted these people. They had been into our primary residence, into our home, that we had meetings with them. It was one of the moments that I really thought about quitting completely, even though we'd been so successful and made so much money. I was just like, I couldn't handle it for a while, but I just hunkered down and we got everything back together and got organized again. And, Andrew and I were really supportive of one another through that time. And I just learned a lot. I mean, obviously I learned that being cheap is not good. And you really should never go with the cheapest quote just because it's the cheapest quote. That's never a good way to make decisions. The moral of the story is that if we had gone with the more qualified, licensed, bonded, insured property management company, and one of their employees had done that to us, they would have been liable for the damages, not us. So that was a big lesson learned. And it was so embarrassing for me to ever share that story at first, but I share it now because I want other people to learn from my mistake. And I was naive at first, and I'm like, how could I not have known? Like, it sounds so obvious in hindsight, but it wasn't at the time. So anyways, I hope that helps somebody listening. Don't do what I did.
Goodness. Well, I mean, that was certainly a learning lesson. I hate that you had to go through that. And I can imagine being that devastated. I've had handyman screw me over before, and that hurts. But on that type of scale, I can see how they probably felt like they were friends, but
we did. But somebody told me this acronym once called FAIL, and FAIL stands for first attempt in learning. And I was like, oh, I really like that. So I try to reframe things that way. And I also try to look at it as, that's what I paid to be educated. That was my tuition payment. I had to pay $6,000 to learn to never make that mistake again. And I sure as heck won't ever make that mistake again. So it's a learning process and you get better over time. And that's the way you learn.
So we are talking about scale, of course. And I think we kind of glossed over just a little bit how you went from one duplex / one primary residence up to the 38 doors. And now I personally know you're not a trust fund kid. You've never made more than $100,000. Weren't you making 36?
Yeah, I was making 36 when I first graduated, and I never made six figures actually from a job or career. So thank you for calling that out, because a lot of people assume that, and I didn't have those specific advantages starting out. So
yeah, so you started without student loan debt, which was due to your own being really on it. I didn't know what I was doing in school, so I had to spend the first couple of years of my journey paying off debt, as we know. And I also started kind of low income. I'm building it up a little bit now, but my day job, I make 50 grand. So how did you scale, especially on investment properties where you weren't house hacking or doing live-in flips or anything like that? How did you scale up those doors? Can you talk numbers?
Absolutely. Happy to share numbers, income, whatever you want. So as you said, I was on a super low income, $36,000 after I graduated. After that, I made $42,000, but then $32,000. So the first few years after school, I was super low income. I didn't have student loans though, because I paid my way through college selling Cutco knives. Have you heard of Cutco cutlery?
I hate an MLM, but I'm glad it worked for you.
It's a direct sales company. They don't like do recruiting or whatever. But so I did that. And then Andrew is a veteran. So he paid his way through school using his military benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so neither of us had student loans, which is great. Our combined income was over 6 figures. And one thing we did is we tried to be as frugal as possible in those early years. So I was really focused on a 50% savings rate. And even before I met my husband, when I was single, making that $36,000 income, I was saving half of my salary. So I was living off something like $1,500 a month in those early years and being
I've
very
been on that
disciplined.
budget. That budget is not fun.
You know, exactly. You very well know that budget. It's not fun. It's a lot of sacrifice. And we talked about this the other day. You know, I was really restrictive and in that scarcity mindset, and I kind of missed the whole strategy of increasing my income. I was just focused on how can I spend as little as possible. So I could have done things differently and made my life easier. I didn't know that at the time. So that's one thing, is we were frugal. We were saving 50% of our salary. Another thing is that we lived in an affordable city. We lived in Louisville, Kentucky. So it helped us save money. And it also helped us make our first few investment purchases because we weren't purchasing $1 million investments. Our first duplex cost $100,000. So to save up 20% for a $100,000 property is a lot easier than saving up 20% of a $700,000 property in a city like Denver, Colorado. So that made a big difference. And because of that, I always encourage aspiring investors to invest out of state. If you live in an expensive city, don't let that hold you back. Look out of your market, look at investing in other states. I don't live in Kentucky anymore, and I had that fear of moving away at first. And now I can say it's easier said than done to manage these rentals from afar. Living in Louisville, Kentucky was a big help in terms of how affordable the housing was. And then how did we scale? There were a few keys to scaling in terms of, I already said a couple. Another one is that we did not give into lifestyle creep. Mm-hmm. So when I started getting raises and I finagled my way into finally a corporate finance career, started making 75 grand. In 2017, I think my husband finally got to that $100,000 mark. So our combined income started to get really powerful. We were still saving as much of that as possible. So you can see how we could save now tens of thousands of dollars per year, and our savings was stacking up really quickly just from our income. But also, once we got our first duplex in Louisville, the one that cost $100,000, it was cash flowing $500 per month in profit. That was the starting cash flow. We worked so hard to find that. It was so discouraging. It took us 9 months. We made offers. We had accepted contracts that fell through. We wanted to quit. Like, it was just this whole thing. So by the time we got this duplex, it would have been really easy for us to be like, wow, we did it. Let's live it up. Let's take our foot off the gas. Let's get a new car. Let's upgrade our lifestyle. But instead of doing that, we just stayed disciplined and we decided, wait, we're just going to save 100% of this cash flow and put it towards the down payment on the next property. And
that's $6,000 a year plus what you were already saving from your personal incomes. And then how much did the next property cost, and how much did you have to put in, and how much you said it was making 2,500?
Yeah, the next property cost $430,000 and it was making $2,500 a month in profit.
So you had to put 25% down on that?
We put, we put 20%, I'm pretty sure. We were still able to get a 20% down payment in 2017. It's harder to do that now.
So you were able to save up like $80,000 in a span of like a year or so? That's really awesome. Well, you said you'd been increasing incomes and kind of just shoving all that away.
Yeah, it was really aggressive. But here's the other thing. The last key, and this is the most important key, is that I had my real estate license.
Right. And in your book, you talk about that. Tell me about that. Did you have your real estate license when you bought the duplex, or did you get that for the boarding house?
I had it before I bought the duplex because in some of my previous lower paying jobs, they were real estate related. So I did get my license during that time. And this was a big advantage. I never had my license to help clients. It was only for my own purposes as an investor. So I would represent myself as the buyer's agent on everything that we bought.
Which means you got a check at closing. So how much of a check did you get at the closing on the duplex?
It was a little over $2,000.
Okay. And then on the boarding house, how much did you get?
Maybe 10,000, a little over 10,000.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And then there was one that was 11 or 12, I think, and then 10. It was a lot. I mean, we would fully deplete our savings to buy a house, but then I would know I would immediately be getting a commission check back for thousands of dollars. And it was another chunk that we would put towards the down payment for the next property that just accelerated that even more. So that was really the key for us that enabled us to scale quickly.
Did you ever think, as a representing yourself, that you might like miss anything? That's kind of my worry with, because I have a real estate agent who knows so much about the area and has connections with all the people. Also, I really don't want to study anymore.
I did it because one of my previous jobs, I was a administrative assistant to a realtor, and I helped her clients. I worked them and I assisted them during their closing. So I transacted hundreds of deals, basically.
So you already had the realtor knowledge base.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's
I had
really
a lot
cool.
of it. Yeah, so I felt comfortable representing myself.
Very cool. All right. So then you bought 2 more boarding houses and you're up to 38 doors, and then you retired yourself. Tell me about how that happened. What kind of work were you doing at the time, and how did that decision come about?
Okay. So our initial goal was just to replace my full-time salary, which by then, after one last promotion, I was making $89,000 by 2018, 2019. And we had definitely done that by 2018, but so I could have quit in 2018. Then that ended up being a lot harder than I thought to actually go through with it. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of, what are people going to think of me? So I got caught up in my head a lot. But by 2019, we had built our passive income up to $10,000 a month in profit. So that's after expenses. And that wasn't just from the real estate, although the bulk of that was from the real estate, but that was also the income from my book, Money Honey. And later that year, I published Passive Income Aggressive Retirement. And that was another income stream that started coming in. So we had the rental income and the royalty income, and that's what made up our $10,000 a month in passive income by 2019. That is the year that I retired. I became financially independent. Our passive income more than covered our living expenses, which were about $6,500 at the time. So quit my job. I focused on my business, and I haven't looked back since. It's been a lot of fun.
That is amazing. Huge congratulations to you on that.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you got over the fear, because now that's your tagline, retired at 27.
Yeah.
And that has gotten you in like CNBC and where else? Where else have you been?
Business Insider and Bigger Pockets podcast and
we were in a book together.
Yeah, Dan Sheik's book, right?
Which is perfect because you started out with a money book for teens, and Dan's is a money book for teens. So I'll have a link to his book down there below. Awesome. Very cool. And both Rachel and I are featured in it.
Yay.
Okay. So where are your doors now, and what's kind of your future plans? Do you still own the duplex? I don't think you mentioned it.
When we had 38 units, our portfolio consisted of 2 single families, 1 duplex, and then 3 boarding houses. Now, last year in 2021, we made the decision to sell the 3 boarding houses. Here's the way I looked at this. The boarding houses were something, again, that served us well starting out because they required a lot more time to manage, but they made a ton of money. So starting out for us, that was perfect. 4 or 5 years later, we started to get tired, and we had 2 options. We could hire a property manager or we could sell. We talked about that a lot. But it wasn't just about how to make it more passive. I was starting to lose a little bit of peace of mind because of some things that had happened at the boarding houses recently. One tenant had set fire in a kitchen. Another tenant had set fire in another kitchen. And it was within the span of 2 months or something. And no one was hurt. Everyone was fine. Nothing happened. But in one of them particularly, it was the kitchen on the very bottom floor of this house. And there was 3 stories above it. And I was just thinking about 12 people in one building. And I just started getting nervous. Of course, we had all of the insurance, we had the LLC, we had all the legal and insurance protections, but it's not what it was about. Like, how could I ever live with myself if somebody got hurt on my property? I don't know. It just seemed like the boarding house was a much higher risk and liability than a normal long-term tenant in a duplex or in a normal property, because there were so many people in one building.
A lot of times people in this space tend to be like, I've got hundreds of doors, and I have like 3, including the one I live in. So really only 2, but like the amount of just mental like worry space that comes with just being responsible for places where people are calling home. Like even in like my short-term rental, like there's a percentage of my brain that's always kind of thinking like, anytime weird weather comes in or anytime anything happens, I'm just like, are my people okay? Are my people and properties going to be okay? And I can imagine that takes up a lot of like mental thought.
Yeah. And there were some other things that happened, some other instances that made me feel unsafe. And that just made me feel like, you know what, I think it might be time to sell. These properties had served us well, but at this point, we have a lot more money than time. And we're looking at ways to free up our time. It was a very fortunate place for us to be, but I wanted to figure out how we can make our income streams even more passive. One thing about rental properties is that they're not fully passive. And I never portray them to be, right? Even with a property manager, there's always going to be an aspect of manage the manager. And the boarding houses were semi-passive at best. So I decided to sell them. And I think I would have felt differently if we had owned all duplexes or just normal quads with long-term tenants, but this is just a whole different operating model. So we decided to sell them, and we decided we are going to take this money and transition this money and invest it into real estate syndications, which in my opinion is the only way to directly own real estate and have a truly passive income stream from real estate. And that is one of the most exciting things I've ever done. Would you like me to explain kind of high level what a syndication is?
Very briefly, just kind of an overview for somebody who doesn't know.
Okay. So if you are investing and you're an investor, you want to buy a $10 million apartment complex and you don't have the money, you can form a syndication, which allows you to raise money from a bunch of other people. So people like Sarah and I could go invest in this syndication, put $25,000 into the syndication. And then we are a part owner in the apartment complex, which entitles us to a share of the cash flow and a share of the profits if it ever sells. So all you have to do to invest in this, you have to do your due diligence up front. But then once you send your money in, you don't do anything. You don't manage it. You don't make decisions. You just literally sit back and collect your money. So at this point, Andrew and I have invested in 8 different syndications. And now we're collecting quarterly distributions from all of those without doing anything. So it's my new favorite thing.
Well, there are downsides to syndications too, though. Like if you don't get to have any say in, the way the complex is managed, no input whatsoever, correct? Are there any other downsides?
For sure. I would say there's more risk just because you're really placing your trust in a person more so, and you need to vet the person, do your due diligence on the syndicator. People can really get easily scammed out of money. There's risk in any investment, though. You can lose your money when you buy your own rental property as well. I would say that's the only other main downside. You
don't have to go change light bulbs or plumb toilets or anything like that. It's completely outsourced, which is neat.
Yeah.
I do like to touch my property, though. Just
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'll get over it. I'm hoping I'll get over it one day. So tell me about your life now that you are 31.
No,
I turned 30 in a couple months.
So almost 30, 29.
Yeah.
Tell me about your life now. What does it look like that you are retired? And
okay, so life is fun. I think I'm going to start using the word financially independent because people get a little bothered by retired because I still work, but I work because I want to, not because I have to. That's the only difference. I work when, where, and if I want, which to me is the definition of retirement, but not everyone agrees, which is fun. But I still work on my business in terms of I have books, I have courses, and my goal is to empower women to take control of their financial future with excitement and confidence. That's all I want to do. That's what brings me joy. That's what brings me fulfillment. That's what I love to do. So I do spend a few hours a day on that. But otherwise, I work out a lot. I love to go to the gym. I love to hike. I love to travel. Andrew and I are finally doing international travel again. So tomorrow we go to Mexico with some friends. I'm super excited.
Literally the original time that we had scheduled for this interview, you were like, I have to leave the country tomorrow. I'm so busy. It was more than, and then I saw pictures of you. Where were you? Like Costa Rica or somewhere awesome?
Yeah, it was a month ago and it was in Guatemala. And we're back in the same scenario today. So. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And I see you on Instagram, which at Money Honey Rachel. You should definitely follow her. She's got a lot of really awesome business content and really funny stuff, and also a lot of educational stuff, which I really appreciate from you. But you also get to see her like lifting patio furniture in Guatemala because they didn't have a gym because life is so hard. Joking.
I know.
But also like working off of like a little stool in an Airbnb because that's where they're living right now.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah. But you are about to buy your first real estate investment property in Colorado, correct? Because you live.
Oh my gosh, yes, you're right. I forgot about that. So I technically have another. We just closed. Like a week ago. Yeah. So we have another investment property here in Denver, a single family house. It's going to be similar to the boarding house style, but the difference is that Andrew and I are silent partners this time. Okay. So we funded the investment, and another couple is going to be operating everything, doing all of the work, and we're going to be splitting all of the profits 50-50. So it's perfect.
Much more passive.
It's great because they're starting out. They don't have the funds that they need to expand quickly. They're willing to put the work in. They have the time, and we have the money, and we don't want to do the work. So, that's what makes a great partnership, is when you can kind of solve each other's problems. So, and then another takeaway from that for those listening is, if you're starting out and you don't have money, find a silent partner, find somebody like, me and Andrew, who can help you fund your investments and then split the profits 50-50.
That's awesome. Where could people find people like that?
Networking. So join your local real estate investors association. There's one in every city or state, and join real estate meetups in your city and state, and meet with wholesalers, investors, real estate agents, lenders. Just start getting to know people and ask around, ask who's a good silent partner, who's a good hard money lender. And you'll have a big database just in a matter of weeks or months.
I see some of that stuff on Bigger Pockets sometimes too, which might be a good place to get in.
Another great resource. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wonderful. Meanwhile, you're homeless.
You're right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so
tell us about that.
Okay. So Sarah, I have commitment issues. Okay. So Andrew and I have been living out of short-term rentals since May, because we went on this like road trip all around the Western US. We got back to Denver and we were going to buy a property, but I have commitment issues and I just don't know if I want to settle down here. So we just keep finding short-term rentals to live in, but it is okay. Right now we're recording this on March 5th. As of March 14th, when we get back from Mexico, we do not have a place to live. So we are trying to figure that out. And this is the closest we've ever been to not having another place lined up. But for whatever reason, I'm not panicking. Probably because we have friends here and we know we can ultimately crash somewhere.
You can go on Airbnb and find something, I'm sure.
Yeah. Out of desperation, pay too much for something at the last minute, which is probably what we'll do, but it's fine.
Well, if you ever find yourself needing a place in Texas, you're welcome to stay in my short-term rental and I won't even overcharge you.
Oh my gosh, thanks. Maybe I'll show up next week and you'll regret saying that.
Oh no, like I would love for you to come visit.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Okay. So where can people find you and how can they learn from you?
I appreciate that. So both of my books, Money Honey and Passive Income Aggressive Retirement, thank you, are available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback. And Sarah, what I would love to do for your listeners is share my passive income starter kit for free. So if anyone would like to download that, you can go to moneyhoneyrachel.com/passive income.
Perfect. I will put that link down below and on the screen.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And on social?
Oh, social. I'm at Money Honey Rachel on Instagram and TikTok.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for being here today. I think everyone's personal finance journey is different, but when we are willing to talk, especially about like the numbers and our experiences and our failures, we can all learn from each other and help each other kind of get a leg up. So I certainly appreciate your time and your sweet spirit, and I will see you soon, I hope.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sarah. So good to see you today.
You too. All right, guys, that is all for today. Make sure to tune in next week for another video. Go ahead and subscribe and follow the links below to check out this lovely lady here. I will see you guys next time. Bye.